Welcome on this Friday afternoon. It is time for Ask Dr. Geier Live. Wherever you're watching, hope you're making today your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, triple board certified orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and anti-aging and regenerative medicine expert. I help you feel, look, and perform your best regardless of age or injuries. Very, very excited to be back here again. This is the one time each week and the one place that I answer these types of questions. I don't do it in comments to my videos on YouTube. I don't do it in comments left on my website or emails that I get. I just don't have the time. This is the one time or place. So if you have questions going forward, always come back noon Eastern time on Fridays. Please remember, nothing that I say in response to these questions, nothing I say in this video or any of my videos is intended for specific medical advice. This is general information and educational purposes only. The goal here is that you take that information and then when you go see your doctor or orthopedic surgeon, maybe you can ask about this or at least just understand what that doctor told you a little bit better. But I am not telling you what to do. I haven't seen you. I haven't examined you. I haven't looked at x-rays, MRIs. I'm not your doctor. You're not my patient. You're welcome to, and there's information in the description below, the link to my website, that if you would like to see me as a patient, you can certainly do that. Also, I would love to know first names and where you're located. That helps me put a name to a face, especially the people that come back multiple weeks. Anne, hi to you. And it says from, but then not anywhere else. All right, let's go ahead and start. And again, feel free to ask your questions in the chat, not in the comments. If you're watching this and wondering how people are doing that and how these are on the screen, they're leaving it in the chat, not in the comments. I can't see the comments because I'm not in YouTube. I'm using a service called Restream to send it to YouTube. Brian from North Carolina. I used to live in North Carolina. I grew up in part of the time in High Point and Winston-Salem. Went to High Point and Winston-Salem and then went to college at Wake Forest. So I'm and my brother lives in Chapel Hill. Big fan of the state of North Carolina. All right, Christine asks about an osteochondral lesion, a question about it, and potential for osteochondral fracture after repair and a posterior tibialis rupture. You'll have to be more specific about what your question is. What she means by an osteochondral lesion is not just the cartilage on the end of the bone, the white stuff on the end of the chicken bones, so to speak, that's smooth and helps joints surfaces move over each other, but the bone under it. So you have almost like a divot sometimes, and typically there's different ways to treat that. Microfracture has never been terribly effective and it tends to break down pretty quickly. Sometimes you can transfer cylinders of bone and cartilage, say in the knee, from one part of your knee, a non-weight bearing part of your knee, to that part. Or you can take cylinders of bone and cartilage that you get from a donor, somebody that dies and donates their body to science. And so that's possible. As far as the potential for fracture, it would really depend on what the repair treatment was. I have not seen that, but again, maybe there's more to that than I know, so feel free to give me more details. And I'm not really sure about the posterior tibial tendon rupture, where that comes in with an osteochondral fracture. All right, Brian says, how long should it take to see results from 0.25 mils of TB4, nagging shoulder injury? Can I take my vitamins in the morning with the oral BPC? So really interesting, and let me try to get this off the screen real quickly. And I know Brian knows this. I would assume taking it, whereas some of you may not have heard some of the things he's talking about. BPC 157 is called body protective compound, or that's what the BPC stands for. It's a peptide naturally made in our stomachs. It's got a lot of features other than orthopedic type things. It's good for GI issues, ulcers, heartburn, irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel disease, things like that. It's good for your heart, good for your nerves, good for skin and making you look younger, but it's good at increasing type 1 collagen, which makes up tendons and ligaments and muscles. So it is thought to be very good for that. One thing before I get to the TB4 part of that, I've never been terribly impressed with oral BPC 157, quite honestly. I know a lot of people do it because they don't want to give themselves injections. I get that. It is very well absorbed orally, but it seems to work better for more systemic problems, the GI stuff, taken orally than with the musculoskeletal. I feel like it works better injectable. But again, I certainly understand that. When you take that versus the vitamins, doesn't seem to really matter. I know some peptide experts say peptides are best at night before you go to bed, but I don't know that that's a hard and fast rule. I feel like whatever kind of works out best for the person to make sure that they do it, that is probably more important. As far as the TB4, it's tricky. I think that's less important from a healing standpoint. Where the TB4 can be helpful is it's a potent anti-inflammatory, so to help with the pain from an injury. And it depends a little bit on how long that pain has been a problem. So that's a little tricky. The longer the pain, probably the longer it's going to take to get better. There's also some thought with injectable TB4 that the closer you inject it to the problem, in this case the shoulder, maybe the better it works. But typically I would say 2 to 3 weeks using it as an acute form daily, maybe sooner than that. That's where you're going to start seeing benefits. If you're doing it twice a week, obviously it might take longer. Not telling anybody that they should take peptides, because most of these, again, are not approved by the FDA. They're considered experimental, but there's lots of places you could get them. I would strongly discourage you from getting them online. It's just, in Tony Robbins' book, Life Force, he has an entire chapter on peptides. He raves about them, but he cites some source that says 80% of peptides sold online are frauds or fakes, and even worse than not having any of the peptide in them, a lot of times they have fillers and harmful contaminants that can make you really sick. So go see somebody that is certified in peptide therapy and get your peptides from them. They get them from FDA-approved 503B pharmacies, in my opinion. All right, I went on too long about that. Let's see. Did I miss? No, I guess not. Can we gain knee movement in arthrolysis after how much I will tell you, I don't know that. I'm going to try to answer that question, but I may be completely missing. So distal femur comminuted fracture is the end of the thigh bone at the top of the knee, and you typically put it back together, line it up, fix it with plate and screws. I think what he's talking about is a stiff knee that somebody then goes in and scopes the knee and cleans out scar tissue. That can be helpful. Depends a little bit on how stiff it was before and how much motion is achieved during the surgery. And then afterwards, a lot of times you'll use this continuous passive motion machine to slowly bend the knee back and forth over hours and hours each day to try to maintain the motion. My feeling and experience, 16 years doing orthopedic surgeries, is it's better to prevent a stiff knee than to treat it once it's happened. My experience is very rare for people to get back to complete normal range of motion and function once that knee has gotten stiff, a condition called arthrofibrosis. But again, I may be completely off base and missing his question. And Christine in Indiana, okay, here we go. OCD lesions, tibial plafond, treated with microfracture, still having issues. All right, so there's a couple things to think about. The tibial, I can't get hers off the screen either. That we're thinking about. The tibial plafond is the bottom part of the ankle joint. You have the end of the tibia, the shin bone, and then it's the top of the talus. Or she's talking about the tibial plafond. I'm sorry, it's the top of the joint, not the talar side. Microfracture can be helpful. My problem with microfracture, as I said just a minute ago, the results aren't terribly good, especially long term, because even though it makes a type of cartilage called fibrocartilage, that's not as smooth and certainly not as durable as normal hyaline cartilage that makes up articular cartilage. So it tends to break down in the coming years and end up still becoming arthritis. Now that explains a little bit more with the posterior tibial tendon issue. I don't know if you wouldn't typically have that in a microfracture surgery, so I don't know if that was what we call iatrogenic, sort of caused by the surgeon doing something, or if there's more to that. Maybe they transferred the posterior tibial tendon so they could do, I'm not 100% sure, but I've not been super excited with microfracture. But to be fair, an osteochondral transfer for the ankle, it can be done. I've done some, but it's very technically demanding. So for what that's worth. All right, and he was from India. It's good to have you. It's probably very, very late your time, I would imagine. Anne is from Denmark. Very cool. Excited to have you. You maybe, I wouldn't know, but you might be the first commenter on this show in the year or so I've been doing this from Denmark. Very, very excited. Bina, I have chronic instability in my ankle. Let's see, I see another comment. Rolled my ankle, got talar dome edema and a partial ligament tear. The biggest thing, and again, I can't examine you, so I can't tell how damaged the ligaments are, how stable your ankle is. But the biggest thing I recommend to people after ankle sprains is work with a physical therapist, because they can help you restore what's called proprioception. It's sort of a joint position sense, essentially balance, but it's helping your brain know where your ankle is in space to make the muscles fire when they need to lean certain ways and turn certain ways so that you have less sensations of instability. It also helps you get back to sports and exercise much, much faster. Let's see. I feel like I missed somebody here. Well, let's see. Ann says, diagnosed with femoral neck stress fracture. Ooh, tough injury. 8 weeks ago, been non-weight bearing ever since then. MRI showed no significant signs of healing. What's the next step in treatment? Well, let me do the first part of that first. Femoral neck is, for everybody else watching, is the hip is a ball and socket joint. The hip is the ball and socket joint, and all these ligaments are sort of covering the femoral neck, but that's the part below the ball right there. And that is a really tough injury, especially in young people. There's tension side, which is the top side, and then there's compression side, and that's just the nature of how the forces go to that part of the bone. Typically, and Ann may be an exception to this, typically though, compression side fractures heal on their own with a period of non-weight bearing, can take 6 to 12 weeks. Tension side ones, where the bone tends to get pulled apart by muscle forces, don't heal and you have to fix them surgery. But regardless, if it's not healing at a certain point, you talk about a surgery where they go in and put 2, 3, 4 screws up into that bone through the femoral neck to compress the fracture and get it to heal. And that's something that is worth doing, because if that doesn't heal and the blood supply to the femoral head starts to die, then you develop avascular necrosis and need a hip replacement fairly early. Christine, you are very welcome. Let me make sure. Yeah, I don't know that. I think that's everything. Brian, you're so welcome. Excuse me. All right. I am going to give everybody about 60 more seconds, and then I'm going to take off and enjoy the weekend, and I hope you do too. If you do want to come see me, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. At least as of now, I'm not doing virtual appointments with people across the country or across the world. At least at first, you have to come to Charleston. But it's a great place. It's beautiful, great restaurants. It's on the ocean. You'll love it. But you can find out how to do that. There's a link to my website, drdavidgeier.com, and you can basically reach out, fill out a form that says address, phone number, what the problem is, and my assistant and I will work with you to get you an appointment. Happy to do that. Again, triple board certified, can talk to you about all kinds of options, not just cortisone, physical therapy, and surgery. So I am more than happy to do that. I'd love to do it for everybody across the country and across the world, but that's really hard in the United States, where you have to have a license in any state that person lives in to do telemedicine. I know some doctors do it, but it is really, really tricky. All right. And Brian says, I love Charleston. Can you take vitamins with the BPC? Yes, you absolutely can. There are no issues with that at all. All right, you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I look forward to seeing you again very soon for Better Than Ever Live, Thursdays, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And as always, Ask Dr. Geier Live, noon Eastern Time. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.